We were. Hi everyone. This is the continuation of my analysis, critique of Something from Nothing by Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss. In the last part, we analyzed their claim that there is no debate between intelligent design and evolution. What I mean by evolution here is more like unguided evolution, not evolution in the sense that we have a common ancestor, because um, although there's some debate on that too, but that's not the art of the problem. Well, evolution is not really a problem anyway, but uh, but an example is Sir Fred Hoyle, like I showed you, his opinions on intelligent design, in which basically he said that um, the notion that not only the biopolymer but the operating program of a living cell could be arrived at by chance in a primordial organic soup here on Earth is evidently nonsense of a higher order. So obviously he didn't believe that it was possible. This was not much to do with evolution but more with the origin of life. He didn't believe that it was possible for life to originate naturally. And some people, the only reason that they believe that, although I don't necessarily think that, even if it's very improbable, therefore God did it, that would be a sort of God of gaps argument. But most people obviously take God out of the picture because they already assume that miracles are impossible, that God doesn't exist. So since we are here, by epistemic necessity argument, they infer that it was by chance. But of course, that's circular reasoning. So this is just to show that the debate is on, and evolution, although I personally believe that it happened, I'm skeptical about the fact that it's unguided. I think you need some sort of guidance for it. But the debate is on, and like I said in part one, I started to be skeptic when I actually started studying evolution, because I thought the evidence for it was much bigger, and I was completely convinced by it before I studied it. So that may give you something to think about. Now, now they claim here, and I'm gonna show you exactly what they claim here. They talk about someone that believes that the Earth is only 10,000 years old, and they think he's a fool. And that argument is there, but I actually don't agree with that argument. But I'm going to explain it. But let's see what they have to say.
Split-brain business, which you've just been referring to, the most glaring example I know is actually more in your field than mine. I was told by the professor of astronomy at Oxford of a colleague of his who's an astronomer, an astrophysicist, who writes learned papers, mathematical papers, published in astronomical journals, um, mathematical papers, assuming that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. But he privately believed the universe is only 6,000 years old. And now, how can a man like that hold down a job in a university as an astrophysicist? And yet we are told, well, it's his private beliefs. You mustn't interfere with this man's private beliefs as long as he writes competent papers in astronomical journals. That's as long fine. As he doesn't, well, I mean, the key thing is, does he teach his private beliefs? Okay, let's hypothetically suppose that he teaches absolutely correctly that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. How could you want to take a class from a man who teaches one thing and believes something so many orders of magnitude different?
Okay, so now too many problems with he just said, but the first one is he assumes that because, so what is the point of an astronomer teaching in a university and writing a paper? He tells you what modern science teaches, not what he believes in. He teaches you what modern science teaches. So I think that even if the guy believes that the Earth is only 10,000 years old, I don't care. He can believe that it started to exist 5 minutes ago. As long as he teaches what modern science teaches, he is good for the job. Now, but you should ask, but if he believes in modern science, then why on earth will he believe that the Earth is only 10,000 years old? Well, this is the young Earth creationist argument. Premise 1, God exists. Premise 2, if God exists, the Bible is inerrant. Premise 3, the Bible teaches that the Earth is not older than 10,000 years. Therefore, the Earth is not older than 10,000 years. Okay, So personally, I don't agree with this argument, because okay, the argument is valid, but because inerrant means that everything that it teaches is true. So but the argument is not sound, because I think that premise 3 is false and premise 2 is not necessarily true. Well, I think premise 1 is true, but premise 2, if God exists, the Bible is inerrant, that's not necessarily true. And if you want to know more about that, check my video, my two videos actually. Biblical inerrancy, the greatest stumbling stone, which means that I like I put in question the premise too, and I think that I personally kind of believe in it, but I don't think that it's as obvious as many people think. And then premise 3, I don't certainly agree with that one, because I think the narrative of Genesis is obviously symbolical, and even from the text itself. And this is not a retreat in face of modern science. Augustine, who wrote in the 400s, didn't believe the days were literal. So that's a position on Christianity, and this, of course, this is just one particular position in Christianity, and I'm showing you that if the man truly believes that these three things are true, and if he believes that the evidence for those three things is bigger than the evidence for uh, an eternal universe, for the evidence that modern science teaches, then he's rational in believing this. Of course, you disagree with, maybe you disagree with premise 1. Premise 2 and 3 are absolutely neutral when it comes to God's existence. It doesn't matter if God exists or not for premise 2 and 3 to be true, because this is a premise about a text, about a book, and this is a premise, this is a conditional statement. So even if the antecedent is, well, if God does not exist, premise 2 is certainly true, because the antecedent is false. Uh, so, and premise 1, if you have very good evidence for premise 1, as I think there are very good evidence, then it comes to neutral statements when it comes to the existence of God. So you can see that the man can still be um, rational. Well, he can still, I mean, I don't agree with with the conclusion, but you see that it's not something that comes out of nowhere. This is the argument. And but I don't agree with that. I'm not a younger creationist, and but I respect those who are. And I think that the job of the professor is to teach what modern science teaches, not to teach the truth, because if you think about it, it's impossible. How do you know what the truth is? So the job as a professor is to teach what modern science teaches, and if he's doing that, then he's a competent professor, and it doesn't matter what he personally believes about the age of the universe. Now the real mess comes when they start talk about nothing, and I spotted so many mistakes and so many stupid things that they said, that this is gonna take. I think I'm gonna say more things about the mistakes. Fast. I'm gonna say more things about the mistakes than the mistakes themselves, because they said so many mistakes. They did so many mistakes in such a small period of time that I will need lots of time to explain all of them. So let's see this. Let's hear this.
You are telling us that matter arose spontaneously out of nothing, which I find an immensely exciting idea. But many people will find it mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling and offensive. I think maybe not as offensive.
Hell with offensive, but
no,
mind-boggling.
I found no. Well, you're not offended, but I checked my email. It amazes me because the purpose of the book, to some extent, is to say something remarkable. And you were kind enough afterward to point out the analogy to Darwin, and I then just to make it perhaps, but the physicist Steven Weinberg said, science doesn't make it impossible to believe in God. It just makes it possible to not believe in God. Because until you have science, everything's a miracle. And what Darwin showed, as you said at the beginning of our discussion, is this miracle is actually plausible from basic principles of physics, chemistry, and biology.
Well, Darwin may have shown that you can have some sort of miracle in terms of evolution, but I don't really believe that he did that. But never mind. I think that evolution is true, but not unguided. Because it just explained you how the mechanism can work. It didn't really give you a way to explain to make it probable or even remotely probable. But that's a discussion for another day. Now, what Krauss is going to do is he's going to argue, and this book does this, out of equivocation, and you will see this more clearly. Uh, so it tries to refute the principle that out of nothing nothing comes by proving that the universe came from nothing. Obviously, if this is true, then that's false, right? But the thing is that is nothing is not really nothing, and we are going to see like more about that. Now, listen carefully to what he talks about nothing, and bear in mind that nothing is a universal negation statement. It means not anything. Okay, and it doesn't, so if you say that, if you say that nothing has property x, what that means is that there is not anything with property x. It doesn't mean that there is something called nothing that has a property, because that's an absurdity.
That you can produce us without a creator, without an intelligence. And what we've learned is remarkably this question, which is in the sense of cosmology, in my mind, the last bastion of those people who feel there must be a creator, is the fact that it is plausible, based on everything we now know, that a universe could come from nothing. Now, that doesn't mean it did come from nothing any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that.
Nice point you made there. Darwin, like these theories don't really are not necessarily true. They are just theories. I'm glad you said that. But with that in mind, again, I do believe in science. I believe in evolution, but sometimes I'll be skeptical about some things that they say, and it has nothing to do with believing God. If someone proves to me that atheism is true today, I will stay with the exact same position with regards to evolution and to some things about the origin of life, etc.
Yeah. Similarly, we can't prove that the universe arose from nothing, but the discoveries in physics and cosmology have led us to realize it's increasingly plausible, and I find that remarkable, and we're celebrating. And one of the examples of that, and there's a number, but maybe some of them are too much for us to talk about tonight, is this remarkable fact that nothing is unstable.
Observe the nonsense. Nothing is unstable. Now, what that literally means is that there is not anything that is unstable. It doesn't mean that there's something, which is nothing, that is unstable. Nothing is a universal negation. So what he's saying already is an equivocation fallacy. He's changing the meaning of the word nothing, then he ascribes properties to it, he defines what nothingness is, well, he redefines it, then it says that the universe came from that nothingness that he defined, and then he uses an equivocation fallacy to say that the universe came from absolutely nothing. And that's just false, okay? And it's a logical fallacy.
That empty space.
See, empty space is not nothing.
The laws of quantum mechanics, combined with gravity, will tell you that if you have empty space there, and you wait long enough, particles will be created. And if you wait long enough, empty space will always produce a universe full of matter. And it's not a scam. There's no violation of energy conservation. It's from the fact that gravity can have negative energy as well as positive energy.
Agree.
And so nothing is unstable.
That's not
and in
true.
fact, that's the first answer to why there's something rather than nothing, is that nothing's unstable. The big surprise would be if there were nothing.
So he didn't really answer the question, because the question is, why is there something rather than not anything? And he says, well, there is this something because some other something that I just happen to call nothing is unstable. That did absolutely zero that did absolutely nothing to answer the question.
That there's something. Now the problem, of course, of saying that is people say, that's not nothing.
Yeah, because it is not.
No, that's not, and and it's an interesting problem, because when I've discussed this with theologians and philosophers, some of them, and you ask, what's nothing? And my argument is that these are scientific questions, not philosophical.
Really? It's not a scientific question. It's I mean, just look, this is in the dictionary. Nothing is not anything. This is not a scientific, it's not even a philosophical question. A word has a meaning. Okay? No.